Hi, everybody. It's the session number 3 of the grant writing workshop, Finding Opportunities for Early Career Professionals Beyond the NIH, organized and run by ATS or CMB, Grant Writing Committee, and the Early Career Professional Group. My name is Tanya Zyryanova. I'm a junior faculty at UCLA, and I will be moderating the session today. So while people are still joining, I would like to give a brief introduction and the agenda of the workshop today. So first of all, thank you to all our esteemed participants who agreed to kindly walk us through different grant mechanisms. So the first speaker is Maria Brancato, representing ALA, American Lung Association. She's a national director of awards and grants at ALA. She brings experience from previous roles at Claims conferences, Alzheimer's Foundation of America, and Catholic Charities, Brooklyn and Queens. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Elmira College and has a robust skill set that includes leadership, crisis intervention, social services, and budgeting. The next speaker is Ciara Shaver, physician and scientist and assistant professor of medicine, allergy, pulmonary, and critical care at Vanderbilt University, and a current ATS grant reviewer. Ciara's laboratory is focused on understanding the mechanisms of acute lung injury and ARDS. Dr. Shaver is currently funded by KO8 Parker Francis Foundation Fellowship in Pulmonary Research, ATS, and R1 grants. And Dr. Jeffrey Curtis is a professor of internal medicine in the Division of Pulmonary and Critical Care at Michigan State and active physician scientist at VA. His research focuses on lung immunity in human and mice, specifically on the role of lung leukocytes in regulating of pulmonary immunity. Dr. Curtis is multiple-time nationally recognized with enormous amount of awards, including the John Barwell Award in 2019 and Griffin Award and Distinguished Achievement Award from ATS. He was also previously a chief at the VA and Arbor Healthcare System and a scientific director of a center focused on tobacco-induced lung diseases. So I also want to recognize the group who organizes this grant writing series for ATS members and beyond. So thank you to our co-chairs of the grant writing committee, Joe Bednash and Jennifer Larson-Casey, also my colleague Luis Rodriguez and Tatiana Lina, who is our manager for ECP group. So we want to remind you that to sign up for the future grant writing seminar session, you just have to go on ATS events webpage and click calendar. And this is the link below on the website. You can copy paste it in your browser as well. So we also want to remind you on how to find another foundation grants beyond the ones that we're discussing today. So here's the list of a few resources that we find might be helpful. The first is ATS Grant Resource Guide, and the screenshot on the right illustrates the web page. So you basically can also copy paste that link into your browser. Another database is called SPIN, which represents world's largest database of sponsored funding opportunities. A good strategy always to talk to your office and sponsored programs within your institution and approach the grant office. Also, always remember talking to your mentors, co-mentors, colleagues, and peers will never hurt. So the agenda for today's workshop. First, we'll start with presentation going in order as I introduced our speakers. approximately 10 minutes per presentation. Then we'll have a collective Q&A session where you guys can drop out your questions in the chat or raise your hands, and all the speakers are happy to answer. And at the end, we'll have about 5 minutes of wrap-up session with the takeaway messages and conclusion remarks. So the slides will be distributed after the events, and all the speakers are available for any questions that you may have along the road. Welcome, Maria, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you so much, Tanya, for the opportunity to discuss and talk about our grant opportunities. So as Tanya mentioned, my name is Maria Brancato. I'm the National Director of Awards and Grants at the American Lung Association. And I just wanted to share a little bit about our research institute and then focus on our early career grants. The American Lung Association Research Institute was launched in 2023. It has 4 components, which collectively represent a comprehensive approach of the Institute in promoting innovative research, collaboration, translation of discoveries, and scientific exchange. Our Awards and Grants program offers funding through different grant mechanisms. Our funding spans all career stages, from early career development to established researchers advancing investigator-initiated projects. Our clinical research program includes the Airways Clinical Research Centers, or ACRC, which is a network of top medical researchers across the United States. Then we have our accelerator program, which is designed to turn scientific discoveries into practical solutions. We support promising projects and innovative technologies that could significantly impact respiratory health. Our science forum allows scientific exchange and collaboration in respiratory health research. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on the Awards and Grants program, specifically our early career grants. Next slide, please, Tanya. Thank you. The Awards and Grants program is currently funding 94 researchers to support innovation in the field of lung health. This funding enables researchers to explore new avenues of investigation and make significant contributions to understanding and treating lung disease. Each research grant is carefully evaluated by a panel of disease-specific experts who score each research applications for its innovation and potential for impact. Next slide, please. For the 2024-2025 grant cycle, we offered 9 grant mechanisms, which included the Catalyst Award for $50,000 for up to 2 years. This award is for early career researchers on track to pursue a career in lung health research and with a mentor. Then we have the Innovation Award for $75,000 a year for up to 2 years. This award is intended to support highly promising investigators who have the potential to advance the field of lung disease science. Applicants must have held an NIH equivalent of K or R type awards within 5 years, but no more than 3 R01 types. Public Health and Public Policy Award is for $50,000 per year for up to 2 years, and it funds projects that support the analysis of critical public policy issues related to lung health. Then we have our Lung Cancer Discovery Award for $100,000 per year for up to 2 years, intended to support independent investigators conducting clinical, laboratory, or any groundbreaking project aimed at understanding our current understanding of lung cancer. Furthermore, we have our Emerging Respiratory Pathogen Award for $100,000 per year for up to 2 years, which was created to gain a better understanding of the pathobiology and long-term and immediate implications of respiratory infections. We have our Indoor Air Award, which is offered for up to 3 years. That duration ensures support and continuity for research in this critical area. And the grant mechanism is for $50,000 to $100,000 per year for up to 3 years. Next slide, please. We also offered co-funded award mechanisms. I encourage you to visit our website to learn a little bit more about them in detail. I'm just going to give you a brief overview. Our Hastings Community Foundation grant This partnership we have developed for independent investigators to conduct basic clinical and translational research in interstitial lung disease. Then we have our Allergic Respiratory Disease Award with the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. This award encourages investigators to conduct research into advancing the understanding of allergic respiratory diseases. In partnership with ATS, we offered our 120th anniversary grant for basic translational or clinical research. We are also working with the Chest Foundation for another 120th anniversary grant. Furthermore, we have our Dalsomar Research Award, which is a mentored award meant to provide seed monies to junior investigators for researching the mechanism and biology of interstitial lung disease. I want to share a little more information about the mentored awards for early career researchers. Next slide, please. The Catalyst Award is designed to support promising early career scientists conducting innovative research in basic science, clinical, behavioral, or translational lung health research. The goal of this award is to provide funding that helps investigators generate preliminary data, establish independent research careers, and position themselves for larger funding opportunities in the future. Preference is given to projects that are novel, innovative, and in design approach, utilize modern technology, or incorporate a multidisciplinary collaborative training plan. The successful applicants are early career faculty on track to pursue a career in lung health research with a mentor who has a demonstrated history of lung disease research and mentorship. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Dalsomar Award specifically supports research in interstitial lung disease. This award provides crucial funding for scientists investigating the mechanism, pathophysiology, and potential treatments for ILD, helping to bridge the gap between basic science and translational application. As with the Catalyst Award, applicants should be on track to pursue a career in lung disease research with a mentor who has demonstrated history of research experience and mentorship. This award is intended to support investigators prior to receipt of career development awards like NIH's KOA, K23, K99, or similar, and postdoctoral fellows and medical fellows who are seeking to complete at least 2 years of mentored research are welcome to apply as well. Factors that are considered indicative of established investigators include academic rank of professor, associate professor, awards such as an R01 or national reputation as an investigator in your field. Next slide, please. Thank you. In 2024, 62 scientific peer reviewers met in Chicago to review 178 applications. Of those 178 applications, 51 were awarded. This year, we recruited 90 reviewers who are going to be reviewing 246 applications, and we are going to meet in person again in Chicago this spring. Here is the breakdown of the grant mechanisms for 2024-2025 grant cycle. You can see the pay line on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. So how are our funding recommendations made? Applications that are determined to be administratively okay are given to an external peer review panel. Factors that are considered when reviewing applications include scientific merit, technical feasibility, innovation in approach design, and methodology. The project relevance to the mission of the American Lung Association, which is to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease. Applicants' education, experience, evidence of faculty status, or permanent research appointment on ongoing institutional commitment from the department chair is also looked at, as well as the impact of the research on lung health and likelihood that the applicant will have significant contribution in the field. Our Lung Cancer Discovery Award, Respiratory Pathogens Award, Indoor Air Awards all require LOIs. Currently, we have not opened our next grant cycle. but typically LOIs are due in September and grant opens in August, early August. None of our early career grants that I discussed, the Catalyst and the DALSIMA, require LOIs. Okay, full applications are reviewed by 2 scientific peer reviewers who provide an overall impact score and comment, as well as a critique that will be shared with the applicant for feedback. We follow the NIH scoring system. 1 is excellent, 9 is very poor. Applications are ranked by their average preliminary score. The applications that have the highest score, the highest scored actually, are triaged and not discussed at the review. The remaining applications are discussed at the scientific peer review meetings. The entire committee scores the applications, and the best scored applications are recommended for funding. Next slide, please. These are just 2 examples of our current awardees for Catalyst Awards. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can also learn more about the types of projects that we fund by visiting lung.org. Under Meet the Researcher, you can see all of the projects that are currently funded and were funded in the past. Next slide, please. Okay, so 4 tips for your consideration for application. So first, we say to thoroughly read the entire solicitation and make sure that you meet all eligibility criteria, requirements and criteria. Then we encourage you to go to our website, as I mentioned, Meet the Researchers, where you can see the types of projects that we currently fund based on their mechanism. Know your timelines. Make sure that you're well aware of when the LOI deadline is, when the application deadline is. When you read through your RFA, you can see how long it's going to take you to fill each of the sections. Highlight any techniques you've mastered or showcase solid pilot data you have. This is your chance to shine. And then reach out to your research community or academic mentor to discuss any ideas and to have them look over your project before you submit it. And with that, my presentation is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And we are going to our next speaker. I'm turning to the next slide. So let's give it a second. So Ciara, take it away.
All right, so I'm gonna talk about the ATS-sponsored grant program and give you insights from both when I applied for these grants myself and then what I've learned in reviewing these grants over the last several years. Next slide. So there's really in the ATS grant portfolio, there's 2 big categories of grants available. The first are unrestricted grants, which are funded by the ATS itself. These grants are about $40,000 a year and 1-year grants. They award 6 every year. And then the second bucket of grants that is available are partnership grants with the ATS, where different organizations, companies, or groups have partnered with ATS to encourage research in a specific focus area. There's more variability in these grants, both in terms of the amount that's awarded. It can be $40,000 to $100,000 a year. Sometimes these grants are 1-year grants, sometimes they're 2 years grants. So this, like Maria said, it's really important to pay attention to the details of a specific grant award when you're applying, and you have to follow the directions. The number of partner grants that's available does differ from year to year, just based on the overall situation. These are really fantastic opportunities. You can go to the next slide, please. These 2 grant categories are a little bit different in terms of how you apply. So obviously they both have eligibility requirements that you need to make sure that you meet. You do have to be an ATS member to apply for these grants. The unrestricted grants have a letter of intent stage, and I'll talk about exactly what that includes in a second, that get reviewed, and then a subset of the letters of intent are invited to submit a full application. The partner grants skip the letter of intent stage, so you can apply if you think your research project meets the rules of the specific partner grant. And so those full applications have the same components as the unrestricted grant for review. The timeline shifted recently in the ATS grant process. Now the grant portfolios are published in January of each year. If you're applying for an unrestricted grant, the letter of intent is due in March, so they were due just a few weeks ago. Then those letters of intent are reviewed fairly quickly, so you find out in May whether you're invited to submit a full application for your proposal. And then the timing of the partner grants is a little bit later because they skip that LOI process. So for all of the applications, both unrestricted and partner grants, the full applications are due the 1st of July with an intended start date of January the following year. So if your research falls under one of the potential partner grant opportunities for this year, now's the time to be thinking of your ideas and trying to determine what preliminary data you may need for your application before those are due in July. Next slide, please. This year, there are 4 different partner grant opportunities that are shown here with very specific research focuses and different amounts. This year, they're all 1-year grants. For some of the partner grants, there's 1 grant available. And for some of the partner grants, there's multiple grants available to award. In terms of the nuts and bolts of how you apply, we can go to the next slide. So when the ATS research grants ask for a letter of intent, there are multiple components of a letter of intent. When I started out, I thought a letter of intent just means like type something in a Word file and turn it in saying what you want to do. And that is not the case. You do have to include biosketches, information on your grant funding, and you do have to have a commitment for a faculty position for these proposals. But for the science piece of these, of the LOI, they're actually very short. 1,500 characters is really not very much space. And so what you're trying to really emphasize in your letter of intent is the innovation and sort of the strength of your hypothesis, and then make it clear, these are short paragraphs. What is your approach to trying to answer your question? We totally understand that you cannot give us all the details, right? We don't expect you to, but we want to know what your idea is. What is your hypothesis, and why do you think doing this project is going to be important? When we get the letters of intent, those are reviewed by 2 reviewers and just given an overall score. And then the letters of intent are put in order based on highest score to lowest score, and based on how many there are, sort of determines where the cutoff is of who gets invited to submit a full application. You do not get feedback of any kind on your letter of intent. So you don't get like secret information to help you write a stronger full application. You just know if you are over or under the line. Next slide, please. For all the grants, when you do the full application, you still have to have the institutional support and biosketches and key personnel type things that you did for your letter of intent, if that was part of the process. The research proposal on the full application is not measured by character counts. It's about 10 pages and kind of follows the typical format where you have an aims page, you give background and innovation like you would in an NIH grant, and then explain your aims and your research approach and what you expect to find. These applications do need to have preliminary data. The preliminary data does not have to be published, but you do need to show data supporting your scientific premise, the feasibility of you doing the project, and to make it clear that if you don't have the expertise needed for the project, that you have the right collaborators to help you with that. You turn in the whole application, and then the ATS review process for the full applications similar to the Lung Association, is an NIH-style grant review. Each grant is reviewed in detail by 3 reviewers who give overall scores and write comments for each of the different components of the grants. You do get the feedback from those reviews. Not all grants that are submitted are discussed. So based on the initial scores from the 3 reviewers, the highest scoring grants for each grant mechanism are selected for discussion. And that's one of the ways that which grant you apply for is very important, because each of the partner grants kind of have their own list of applications. So the cutoffs of what your score has to be do vary based on the specific grant that you're applying for. At study section, I would guess there's probably, I don't know, 30 or so people on the study section. I don't know the exact number. The first reviewer summarizes your grant and tells everybody what you said you were going to study and how you're going to do it. And they give their kind of positives and negatives about the proposal. And then the second and third reviewers add additional comments to help people get a sense of where the grant falls. Then the group discusses, so the other listeners can ask questions, they can ask for clarifications, they can discuss whether something is a strength or a weakness, or if it's a big problem or a small concern. And then everybody on the study section scores every grant. So 3 people read your whole grant, every word. And then the other 27 or so people listen and look at, you do have access to the grant to look at while the reviewers are talking. And I think it's important to understand those kind of 2 groups of people that are thinking about your scientific proposal. And then, like other things, the scores are averaged across all the reviewers, and then the committee determines the top scoring applications for each grant category, and those are reviewed. So in terms of where the numbers fall here, you can go to the next slide, Tanya. The funding lines vary. They vary from year to year. They vary by the specific grants offered. So in general, for the unrestricted grants, a little more than 1/3 of the letters of intent are invited to submit a full application. In the last grant cycle, there were between 80 and 90 LOIs that were submitted. Of the people we invite to submit the full application, about 80% will submit the whole application. Obviously, other things come up. So the fact that you submit a letter of intent does not require you to submit a full application if you were invited to do so. Of the full applications that are received, a little bit more than half get discussed in study section. And again, that varies by the specific grant mechanism. And of the grants that are discussed, so if you make it to the discussion, about 40% of the discussed grants are funded. So if you look at it from how many of the full applications are ultimately funded, it's between 20 and 25%, which is actually exciting and really fun. The partner grants are a little bit different. It's harder to put numbers on these. Some of the partner grants get many more applications than other partner grants, and it depends a little bit on exactly what the partner grants are. Obviously, if it's a grant that just restricts the disease you're studying, some diseases are studied by more researchers than others. And sometimes there is very specific interventions that are being studied where there may only be 1 or 2 or 3 grants even submitted for that category. When you look overall across all the partner grants, between 20 and 25% of the applications submitted are funded. So these are actually encouraging numbers, and it's really fun as a reviewer for these grants to really be able to read them, see the creativity of the scientific community, and see kind of where our junior faculty members and our outgoing fellows are. Thinking about their science and trying to not only fund their exciting, innovative work, but these grants, because they're small, are stepping stones to bigger things to come. And so it's really exciting to read these and have someone say, I need this grant for 1 year because this will help me develop the preliminary data so that I can put in a strong K, or I can put in an R01 or a K99 or whatever the grant may be. So it's really exciting. You can go to the next slide, Tanya. So I think in terms of my tips for success or things I learned the most along the way, the first is really take advantage of the resources around you to figure out what your grant opportunities are. I feel like people apply for the same 5 categories of grants, and there are an awful lot of different grant mechanisms out there, from the Lung Association, ATS, the VA, Department of Defense, but then also there's so many patient-centric foundations that will fund small research projects. So just because it's not a hundreds of thousands of dollars research opportunity, grants beget grants. So if you can apply with a good idea to a smaller manageable grant, it gives your later funders confidence that you know how to tailor a project and then execute on that project. So think broadly in terms of where your science might fit. When you have things like partner grants that have a specific focus, think creatively about your research and whether it fits that particular niche, because sometimes the more specific grant proposals have fewer applications. And so strategically, you may be able to tailor your proposal to a specific area. I think the most common mistakes or most common concerns we see when we're reviewing the grants is that the size of the science doesn't match the duration of the grant. So if you're writing a K award that's a 5-year grant and you just delete half the text and try to stuff it in to our small awards, we know the difference between 5 years of science and 1 or 2 years of science. And so that is not successful. And is frowned upon. So make sure you right size your science. The same is true for the budget. Science is expensive, as we all know, and fancy techniques cost a lot of money. And so if you have this lovely proposal about how you're going to solve a major problem in this patient population, and you're going to do a whole bunch of single cell sequencing on hundreds of samples, right? We know you can't do that for $50,000, right? So design your science to match the budget, or be very explicit and show documentation of where the rest of the money is coming from. So sometimes you'll fund an innovative, cool project, and you'll give $40,000 or $50,000 to support the investigator in the project, and it just has to be clear that their PI or collaborator is going to toss in the last $100,000 to actually make it work. So you could have the coolest project and have it just be completely not appropriate for the amount of money given, and that diminishes enthusiasm. I do think that feasibility is really key. Right? You don't have to have as much preliminary data to be successful for these grants as you do for a K or an R, but you do have to show us that you have the expertise and the tools to do the project. If you can't show the preliminary data, you need to have collaborators that have published or shown experience with those tools. And then you have to tell us about power and statistical analysis. I am really surprised at how many times there's no comment in a grant proposal about how you're going to actually analyze the data. And that's just an easy checkbox. There's no reason to miss that. And it's a silly reason not to have your grant competitive for funding. So don't forget those things. And I think the other thing that I see in young investigators is you sell yourself short, right? We've all started our careers. We've all been there at the beginning, and all of the pieces are important. And how you're assessed when you're a junior faculty member coming straight out of fellowship versus a more senior faculty member is different. So all of your abstracts and, residency poster presentations, fellowship poster presentations, abstracts, attendance at meetings, those talks at meetings, those are all really important metrics to show us that you're integrating yourself into the community. It builds confidence that you're going to be a successful lung scientist. And then make sure you list all of your prior funding on your bio sketch for these awards. Because like I mentioned before, grants beget grants, right? So if you have gotten a $2,000 core facility scholarship, or you got $5,000 to support your preliminary data, or a travel award to present at a conference or something like that, Those all count, right? From a grant review standpoint, those are showing us that people are investing in you and your science, and they know you, and I might not. So it's okay if you don't have K's and R's and hundreds of thousands of dollars of prior grant funding. These awards are meant to support early career scientists. So make sure you toot your own horn and highlight your accomplishments and show us what you've been capable of. That it's exciting and fun to support promising scientists. And so tell us what you got, and don't minimize your amazing accomplishments when you write on your bio sketch and when your mentors or other collaborators write supporting letters. Be positive, and tell us what you've been able to do so far, and then that gives us a sense of what's to come. So I'll stop there, and I'm obviously happy to answer questions after the rest of our speakers. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ciara. And we coming down to Dr. Curtis and the overview of the VA and DoD mechanism. Take it away, Dr. Curtis.
So thank you. I want to apologize in advance. I hope my voice holds up. I'm getting over a cold, but advanced slide, please. So I'm gonna say right off the bat, this is I'm gonna give you a very biased viewpoint here that's focused on the VA. I actually didn't realize I was going to be asked to talk about DoD. I've had DoD funding, but I don't know that they actually have fellowships. So my entire career has been within the VA since the fellowship at UCSF. I got my first faculty position through a VA CDA, and although I'm a reviewer and strong advocate of ALA. At the time, you couldn't have multiple awards, so I actually turned down a Parker B and a ALA Trudeau award in order to get that, to take that VA award. And I'll try to explain why during the talk, but it comes down to money. My lab's been based at the VA ever since, and I've always had a 5/8 appointment, which allows me to the best of both worlds. I could apply for NIH and DoD funding and foundations, but also have this VA core salary. I've also had the tremendous opportunity to mentor recipients of 8 different CDAs, including 3 non-clinician PhD scientists. And before we go to the next slide, I should just again I've skipped thanking the organizers, and particularly Chris Ting, one of my colleagues here at University of Michigan, who invited me to give this talk. So next slide. Go back to that bottom line. I should have said advance. So I told you it's going to be a very biased talk. The bottom line, I think, up front is I'm going to try to convince you, among all the CDAs that are out there, at least for a clinician, and that's what that asterisk is about, the VA is the best CDA, and it comes down to money. 5 years of full salary at the assistant professor level plus lab support. The asterisk also applies to it's not as good for non-clinicians as the Kangaroo Award, this so-called K99R00, that's a 5-year award. That's a better deal. Next slide. So, as many of you know, the VA is the largest integrated healthcare system in the USA. Over 85% of US trained physicians spend some time there. So, for the clinicians in the group, I'm not going to try to convince you that you want to practice at the VA or you don't. You either enjoy it or you don't. It's a fabulous opportunity that I think to pay back a very worthwhile group. The VA routinely outperforms the private sector in both healthcare metrics and patient satisfaction. And advance, please. But most people don't know that the VA also supports a very significant number of non-clinician PhD investigators who are performing basic and translational science. And there actually is a career ladder in the VA that can take you the entire way through to the equivalent of a tenured position with up to 7 years of salary on a VA award. Next slide. So it's much bigger than people think. 102 sites around the country, about almost 3,700 investigators funded by just under $1 billion directly from the VA. Next slide. The Office of Research Development, I'll be using this abbreviation ORD, is the group that oversees the research, and research is a very high priority of the VA mission. It's for, with, and involving the veterans. Next slide. This slide shows an org chart that follows the recent reorganization. I think the important part for you to understand, there are on the stage left, I guess, there are now actively managed portfolios that are things that Congress cares about a lot. They currently don't support CDAs. In the red box, there is a broad portfolio for basically all of medicine below the neck, everything that's not brain or behavioral, and directly involves, and that could be anywhere from cellular, molecular mouse models up to clinical research with humans, but not things that involve rehabilitation or prosthetics, and not health outcomes research. Those are in different portfolios. Next slide, please. So there are two types of VA awards. They provide 3 to 5 years of mentored research, career development, and training. The application has to show a clear commitment to wanting a VA career. This is an intramural program, and VA is very much trying to entice you into it with these awards. The CDA 1 is entry level. You must apply within 2 years of your last training. I'll define that a little bit on the next slide. And the expectation is that you'll apply for the next level on completion. Most people actually go right to the CDA 2. For non-clinicians, and I should point out, I keep using the term clinician, so that's not just physicians, but it's anyone who sees patients. So maybe not so applicable to this assembly, but clinical psychologists, dentists, PharmDs are all, they're clinicians. They would be eligible for that criteria. So if you're a PhD scientist who doesn't see patients, you have to apply within 5 years of your PhD. For MDs, we'll say, and the other clinicians, it's 10 years from that terminal degree and 5 years from the end of your fellowship. Next slide. And you become a VA employee with this. So this slide shows a bit of the specifics. The CDA 1, both the CDA 1, for everybody it's 9 months. For you can ask for 6 to 9 months. I don't know why you would ever ask for less than 12 months total. There has to be a commitment from your medical center. That's a bit new. This used to be a pass-through from Washington. The support can be 12 calendar months for non-clinicians. The project funds, so that's, again, for CDA 1, it's only supplies, 40,000. For CDA 2, it's 75,000. It's discretionary. You could hire part of a tech with that if you wanted. The award duration's 2 years for the CDA 1. For the CDA 2, it's again 3 to 5 years, and I think you'd be out of your mind to apply for less than 5 years if eligible. Next slide. Like a K award, basically, and the VA CDAs are considered K equivalents. If you get this, you're not eligible for K grants going forward. It's a 3-part grant. You have to have a training program that will often involve didactic courses that you either audit or actually get a formal degree. Many of our scientists get master's degrees during this time, and you can budget that into the grant. You need a mentoring team and an environment. One of those mentors must have a history of recent and preferably current VA merit funding, and the primary mentor must be co-located with you in that city at the VA. You can't just have a VA mentor around the country. I'd love to support many of you. I'd take on more trainees, but you have to find somebody at your own medical center. And the research project has to have some relevance to veterans. Within the broad portfolio, that's still fine. I mean, so common disease, lung diseases are hugely relevant to veterans, possibly more so than anything except traumatic brain injury and Gulf War syndrome. Next slide. So this is a complex slide that goes through it. You can read this at your leisure, but I've boxed the point there that there is a pre-application that must be submitted. And the big thing is, if you're going to use Million Veterans Program, and I'd be happy to answer that during the questions, if you're going to use genetic data from the Million Veterans Program, you have to get all that process first, which adds 6 months or more to the process. Otherwise, it's very much like it's very much like an a K award submission. Next slide. And this shows the success rates for the CDA 1s and 2s. You can see they are competitive with funding recently in the 15-16% level. So it's in the range of K awards. But if you don't apply, you'll never get it. And next slide. I think that might be my last, I hope. Okay, and this is just some reference material about who to contact. Mark Rolch at the VA would be the appropriate one for this assembly, I think. And I may have missed it. I think I may have glossed by one of the animations. You must be a U.S. citizen to apply. You have to start early because the RFAs are posted behind the VA firewall. And you'd really like to, if you're not currently working in a VA lab or with VA researchers, you want to start very early in making those connections so it doesn't look like that was a last minute addition. And I'll stop there. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Dr. Curtis. Wonderful presentation, lots of knowledge. These awards are not very popular, and I think because we don't know that much about them. So it's very helpful. And we are welcoming all the attendees to take questions and ask questions.
Yeah, so if questions come up, please feel free to put them into the chat. I think we have a few questions prepared, so maybe we'll start with those, and then we'll move on to any questions as they come up. I think we can start with Dr. Curtis. Can you elaborate maybe for some of us that aren't currently at a VA institution but moved to a VA institution? Maybe we're currently in a postdoc. Maybe we transition. Like, is there a way for us to get into VA funding, and maybe how would one go about doing that?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, I've had 3 PhD, very basic scientists who have been my career mentees. They all were working in VA labs. So I think the first thing to do would be, reach out to the section chief at the VA that's applicable. For most of us, it would be pulmonary medicine. Although I suppose each of the major medical centers will have, VA medical centers will have a research office. You could also talk to the associate chief of research, about that program. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you. And then maybe to the panel as a whole, I think the current funding environment is probably going to increase the number of applications that go out outside of the NIH. So maybe can you give us some advice on whether or not picking one project and trying to send it to multiple places is a good idea, or maybe how to focus that? I do see that many of these awards have very defined parameters, and it might be more difficult to do that.
So I'll share the advice that I was given by mentors. Overlap of grant applications is only a problem if they all get funded. So the advice I was given when I was coming out of fellowship was take your best research idea and get that idea funded. You cannot study 5 different things when you're coming out of fellowship. It's not going to work. It's too much. You're too diffuse. So whatever your best idea is, or whatever you're most passionate about, figure out how to take that process, that idea, and package it into small, medium, and large grants. And it's fairly easy to take like what would be an aim of your K and just step a little bit away from it for your foundation award, right? So think about your project in small, medium, and large so that you can put it into the right size. I totally agree with you. I suspect that non-NIH submissions will go up in the funding environment. So it's going to be really, really important to get good at selling your science. And it's something you're not taught how to do this when you do, because it's just the facts. What do the data say? What do the data tell you? And we're not flowery people, right? It's just the facts, right? What do the data say? And you have to learn how to sell your science, of why people who don't study whatever you study should care about what you study. And so practice that, and make sure to have people read your aims pages and your letters of intent to really help you really, really help you with that.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo that for your career development award, if you're talking about a K, and as I try to emphasize, the VA awards are essentially the same scope. There's no reason you shouldn't um, apply to both agencies with almost essentially identical science, a bit different. The one difference in the proposal will be the relevance to VA research, but that's if you're doing good science. And I should tell you the three PhDs that I've mentored, one was looking at chemokines and dendritic cells in the lung in murine models about 15 years ago, and two of them have been looking at cryptococcus, one in the brain and one in the lung. So very, very basic research can be funded through the VA. But what I was going to say, when you're applying for that level of grant, you probably should be spending 9 to 12 months before that submission working on this proposal. If you're just gearing up 3 months before, that you're not going to get it.
I also have a question to Dr. Curtis. So if you're a PhD and you want to apply for this VA type of CDAs, do you currently have to be an employer of VA, or only you have to have a mentor there?
The latter. You do not have to be a VA employee, no.
Okay.
In fact, you almost certainly wouldn't. What's happened in all the three people I just mentioned who were, very successful. One of them went on to get the PCASE award, the President's Award, under Obama. I mean, it's been a wonderful career. I should highlight that one of my trainees is a former ATS president, Jim Beck. So you can have a very successful career in the VA. So you do want to what we do almost entirely is roll people out of T32s or F32s into a K or a VA award. Over.
So I think LOIs were kind of touched on in both at the ATS and the ALA. Can you give us a little bit more insight into like what is important in an LOI? Obviously, the whole thing can't be reviewed like in depthly. Is there like impact? Is there something like specific that reviewers are looking for to try to differentiate between the which ones are higher scored and which ones are lower scored?
Yeah, that's good. That's a great question. I think some of it is impact of the project. Like, is it a neat question, and is it clearly important to answer? I think part of it is kind of hitting that sweet spot where you give enough data that it is clear that you have really thought through your experimental plan. If somebody reads the 4 paragraphs about your proposal and you didn't tell them what the hypothesis was, and you didn't tell them what your mice were or what your patient cohort was, and it's not clear what you're actually going to do, it's hard to be confident that you're going to get a high quality full application. And so you want to have enough detail. And so like, tell me your patient cohort, tell me your time points, tell me a few of the things you're going to measure and what question you're answering. You don't have to tell me, I'm going to use this ELISA kit and that ELISA kit, and I'm going to do these 18 statistical tests to tell you what cell population is driving my phenotype. You don't have to get into that detail, but it should be a summary of what you're going to do so that you can fill me in on the extra details when you get to give me 8 more pages of information. So if you have preliminary data, say, my question is this, my preliminary data show me this, I am going to do this. But in an LOI, the description of what you're going to do in an AIM is not a whole lot longer than what you would put on an AIMS page, right? I mean, it's basically an AIMS page, a little bit of a longer AIMS page. So kind of that level of detail.
I agree with Ciara. So clear, concise, compelling, just stating the purpose very clearly, at the rationale, defining the goals and the objectives, very brief in approach. I think that for our LOIs, we've started asking for budget. So for us, it would be important to have an idea on how you intend to use the funding. So give yourself a little time if you're applying for ALA grants for LOIs.
I think the other thing is ask people to see their successful applications, right? So nobody is going to bite you if you send them an email, I promise, right? People like getting emails. I saw that you had an ATS grant. Would you mind sharing your LOI with me? I see that you had an ALA grant. I'm a little bit confused on how to strategize my framing. Would you mind if you share your grant? Some people will say no and they don't want to share their grants, and I think that's fine. But an awful lot of people are happy to share their advice or their input, or if they had to resubmit for a grant, you know, sort of what was missed. So if those people are not at your institution, just look them up on the internet and email people. It's easy to find people. And I think it helps you write stronger grant applications, the more grant applications from different places and different people that you see. So stand on the shoulders of the people who went before you. Don't reinvent the wheel.
The one other thing I would add to this is if you look at all three of our presentations, the timelines about this mandate that you basically should have a complete draft of the grant at the time that your LOI goes in. You should already know what the grant's about because you only have in many cases, a month or two after. From the time you will hear that decision, you basically only have a month. And at that point, you should be polishing the grant, not writing it.
Agreed. I think the one other piece of advice I would give is simple is not bad for early career awards. So like if you try to come up with the most amazing, complicated, really super cool thing for a short grant mechanism, it's going to sound confusing. So it's much better to ask a straightforward question and really definitively answer it one way or the other than it is to ask a 6-step question where you get to kind of step 4 and now things kind of start falling apart or it's not clear if it's all going to work. So simplify to where you're asking one question and then answer that the best that you can with your grant proposal. Clear and simple is way better than confusing and maybe complicatedly interesting.
How many figures would you recommend for a CDA grant? It's like, I know it's a question for early career researchers, and like sometimes people try to throw everything they have for the preliminary data. Would you have any tips on that?
So my take is you want to present any data that are absolutely essential for them to understand your hypothesis and the aims, but you don't want to tell them anything extraneous. So rather than, many papers today have panels A through Q. You want it and that's just going to turn off reviewers. You want to boil that down to what do they absolutely need to know to understand the experiments. And I would agree with Ciara, less is more.
Yeah, I can tell. So most people have 3 to 10. It doesn't have to be a lot. I think a figure to explain like how it all fits together is sometimes very helpful. Like we read grants quickly. There are a lot of grants. Like if you can give me a picture so I understand you better, that's a huge win from my perspective. The other sort of thing that changed how I wrote my grants a little bit is the people who are listening to the discussion about a grant are looking at the pictures. They're not reading everything in your grant. So your pictures and your figure legend titles have to tell the story. So when someone is scrolling through your grant, and they say figure 1, this molecule totally determines what happens to a critically ill patient. Cool. Okay, neat. And then you go to the next thing. Here's my strategy, right? So someone should be able to look at the pictures of your grant and get the gist of what is happening. And if they can't do that, it's too complicated, simplify.
I think has a question Welcome.
Hi there.
Hey
I'm
again, Enid.
hey. You guys are amazing, Kira and Jeff, and your suggestions are so great. I wanted to step in and suggest something that not everybody says, and that is give the reviewer white space. And that means that you want the reviewer to just, when they do the overview, because they're usually reading several grants, and you don't want your reviewer to look at your grant and say, oh my God, this is going to take so much time to just plow through all of this text. So create like white spaces so they have points of relief. And also, and the other thing is, depending on how old your reviewers are, they may not like those tiny, tiny, tiny little fonts. So if you have a choice to use kind of a tiny font or a larger font, err on the side of using a larger font, because people can get frustrated with you as a candidate. They can't read stuff. So those are kind of two informal suggestions that I would make.
100% agree.
Tanya, if I can just make one very specific comment, I'm not sure it's exactly germane to this, but those of you who already have K awards, there's a thing called a KO3 that most people don't know about. Looks like Kara might know about it, but that's specifically for somebody who already has a K who needs additional funding in order to get the preliminary data for their R. And it's a brief, I don't know, it's like a 1 or 2 year grant, limited salary. You have to be at least in this, I think, in the 3rd year of the parent K. But that's a fantastic award. And it is possible, by the way, to double dip. K awardees can, again, in the 2nd plus or 3rd plus year, can apply for VA merits if their medical center will allow them to do it. Now, you got to be careful. A merit, again, is the equivalent of an R01. In theory, it's a federal grant. It's a grown-up federal grant. You're an established investigator when you get it. The budgets are smaller, but then again, in fact, your salary is off the budget. So it ends up being almost as much money as an R. So that's again something to think about if you already have a K. Over.
And Dr. Curtis, to continue the question on that, what would be your recommendation to someone who is already 10 years since PhD and already has 2 career development awards, like from other foundations, like VA Merit Award? Do you have to? Okay.
Yeah. So that's a bit different. So in order the easiest pathway into the VA is to come through the CDA, because you'll have the pre-application that basically is like an LOI from the other agencies and foundations. On the other hand, if you're already an established investigator with previous R funding or grown-up funding, you can still get into the VA, but there's another hurdle. You have to apply for an eligibility grant, and or you go through an eligibility process, and those are extremely competitive. It is possible though.
And do these people have, for merit award, like, do you have to have an appointment within VA, or you still can be like an outside candidate, but let's say having a collaborator?
No. So to be a PI on a VA grant, you don't necessarily have to have a VA appointment or paid appointment at the time you apply, but it's as part of the process, there has to be an agreement with your medical center that you will assume a VA position if funded.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, anyone else? It was a fantastic discussion, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Tanya
Yeah,
and Luis, and thank you to everybody for coming. Don't be discouraged. Science is always hard to fund. It always has been hard to fund. It ebbs and flows. So being a curious person who wants to try to learn things to try to help people along the way is a good thing, and that doesn't disappear. And you're surrounded by legions of scientists who want to help you succeed and who want to help grow the next generation. And that has not changed and will not change. Keep on with the science, and we're looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Well, thank you so much. And again, we'll be in touch with the slides from our speakers today. And we hope to see everybody at ATS. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, everyone.